Hey everybody, welcome back, and I've got a new project for you that I'm really excited about. This is a Bordon boot. They were sent to me by the company to RECRAFT, review, and see what we thought of them. They just wanted to get our input, and so they sent me a pair, and I'm really excited about it because I didn't do the RECRAFT right away. I wanted to wear these things. I wanted to trash them. I wanted to do everything I could. These things have been through the ringer. I've been wearing them for a year now, and I wanted to test out the Commando soles because we have the It's High Commando soles now. I wanted to be able to give you guys a good review about them as well as the boot, and so I just put this thing through everything. Stick around and see what goes on with this. As Cobbler Tobias says, stick along. All right, so let's get started on these things. The first thing I like to do before I do any RECRAFT is remove the heel pad, because otherwise you're going to end up accidentally putting nails through it, and then the customer's not going to be happy with you, because even though you can get the nails out, you can't get the holes out of the leather. So I like to peel those heel pads out. And this one is in there. So nice piece of leather that it was. So as I mentioned in the intro, that I've been wearing these for a year, and one of the things that I want to point out before I start tearing them down is the wear on this sole. So for me, I'm very hard on soles, and especially hard on heels. I typically go through 2 sets of heels per sole, and you can see here I'm past halfway with the tread in the center here where I'm the hardest. But my heel, you can look at the balance of it. I have not worn much of that corner off at all. Normally I would have worn that twice before I wore the soles out as much as I have these. So I'm extremely impressed with the durability of the heel and the sole. As I mentioned, I've been testing these for the past year in every atmosphere I could possibly think of. I went rock climbing in them. I went hiking in them. Well, I had to hike to get to the rock climb, but I did both just to see how the grip was. Tested them on the edge of rocks and stuff like that, in water, in snow, ice, mud. As you could see, they were pretty muddy when I brought them in, or as you can see, they were pretty muddy when we started the video. I like the way that base was put on. They've got plenty of nails holding it here. It's a multi-layer base, so they've got nails holding each layer on, because you can see there's nails in this second layer too. Sometimes when we're filming, we get anxious and forget what needs to be done in the order I want it done in, and think about it. And one of the first things I wanted to do is I want to clean this boot up, because it is so muddy and I don't really want to work on a muddy boot. I jumped ahead to the heel, but it's not too late. We can go ahead and do that now. Get these laces out of here. By the way, I want to talk about the laces a little bit later on, so hopefully I'll remember that. Okay, so now we got all the prepping out of the way, back to the heels. They used a brass nail for putting the bases on, but you can see it doesn't let go very easily. It has some resistance, so it's because it... Sorry. Go ahead. Because it's brass, it goes in and clenches inside, and then the threads also help hold it on. So now the best way to get these stitches off, because of the way I want to redo this boot is I'm going to sand these off instead of like I normally do with the knife and cut it off. Okay, so they used some threaded nails from the inside. I'm not crazy about them. They are almost useless because they weren't quite long enough to really go into the base. But then again, the base wasn't that thick because they did a single layer and they had it extra nailed from the other side. I think it just really was an extra step that didn't need to happen in this particular case. So what I'm doing here is I'm picking the bobbin side of the thread out of my top side of my stitch. I do it with the nippers. That's the way I was taught. Some people use little pliers. Little pliers are easier whenever I think about grabbing a pair, but I'm so used to doing it with the nippers, I just automatically go that way. Okay. Now, before I flip the boot over, check this out. Look at how many nails they put in here, holding the shank down, holding the heel seat down. They did not shy away from it at all. I mean, this boot is not a P&W boot, but everything I've seen in the breakdown of the other boot and in this one is just as good of quality in the way that they went about doing it. I know these are made out of Colombia, not in the good old Pacific Northwest, but they didn't skimp on quality at all. And as you see, the upper is in really good shape. I was a little nervous when I got them about these speed hooks. I figured I would break them very quickly. I have not broken them. I haven't even bent them. And the eyelets hold up really good. The tongue was nice and flexible. It was an easy break in. So you can see I didn't clean these, condition them. I didn't do anything to them for an entire year. I totally abused these just to see if they could take it. Now, obviously, this is a casual, rugged type boot, so it's not made to hold up like the real heavy duty P&W type boots, but they do have casual boots, and it's every bit as good as their casual boots. I rode motorcycles in these. I've done dirt biking, hiking, camping, rock climbing, all that kind of stuff in them. Working. We've been remodeling the cabin, getting it ready for our shop, and I've worn these throughout the remodel up on the roof. They grip great on that tin roof. I didn't slide down and die. Okay, so now we've got to get this second row of stitches out. Okay, so we got all the stitches out. Now, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to take this midsole off because I'm going to use it as a pattern. I'm going to put another midsole on here because I want to make this boot a little more rugged than it was. So when I was hiking in it, when I was stepping on jagged rocks and things like that, because this one's made for casual wear, not for that heavy a duty hike. It bothered my feet just a little bit. Now, the support around my ankles, the cup around my heel, fantastic. Just around the ball of the foot, I had great grip, and it didn't roll or twist or anything with the Commando sole like I expected it to do. I was impressed both with the boot and the sole, but because this midsole is a little on the thin side, for that type of activity, I'm going to add another midsole, and that way I'll have plenty of stability underneath me when I go to do my hiking and things like that. So a lot of people ask me, what midsole? What is the thickness of your standard midsole? What is the thickness of your thick midsole? What is the benefit of a double midsole versus a thick midsole? Or how much thicker is a double than a thick? All of those questions get asked. So this is our standard midsole. This is what it looks like before it's sanded. A lot of people use them as soles. We just use them as a midsole. They're a 6-7 iron. How to describe what irons are in shoe repair world, I don't know how to describe that to you. It's just something you have to Google and look up, I guess. Means that it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. So in millimeters, that would be 6 millimeters. Our thick midsole is almost 1/4 of an inch thick, which is close. It's about 10 to 11 millimeters. And our double midsole is 2 layers of our 6-7 midsole. These are made by Lions Volpe. It's a really good midsole. It's not soft and flexible and flimsy like a lot of midsoles. So it gives you a good stability point, and that's why we like it. It's got a nice tight grain, so it finishes out well. You don't have a fleshy piece of leather that just ruins a lot of good work when you're putting it all in there to try to make a good looking job, and also give your customer, you know, what will benefit them the most. So that's what we use. I hope that helps you guys. Oh, the double midsole versus the thick midsole. So the double midsole is for rigidity. When you glue 2 layers together, the fibers of one layer are running one way and the fibers of the other layer are running another. And so when you try to flex that, they're fighting each other, and that makes it more rigid. Whereas a thick midsole, all the fibers are running the same because it's one piece of material. So it's going to break in easier and it's going to flex more. So what we have found with the thin midsole is, or the regular midsole is, it's good for people up to about 185 pounds. For people over 185 to 220, 225, somewhere in there, the thick midsole works better. And then the double midsole works great for people who are 230 and above, or that 225 and above. Y'all may have seen me do a double midsole on my 808.6s in one of our YouTube videos, and those things were a brick. Matter of fact, I've got them on right now, come to think of it. But they were a brick to break in. Once I got them broke in, they were awesome. But it took me about 4 months to break them in. So that's the difference in midsoles and why you would want one. Rubber midsoles are for if you're going to be in real rugged weather and like a lot of water or things like that, and you don't want it to break your bond between your rubber sole and your midsole. So they do have a good place and a good purpose, so they're not bad. They just, we do a lot more leathers because a lot more people are wearing their boots or shoes for casual wear. All right, so I got the midsole on, and now I need to stitch it on. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be stitching the new midsole to the old midsole. The old midsole is pegged to the boot. That's why I don't have to peg this area here. All of that will be taken care of with either the stitching or nailing the heel bases on and stuff. So I'm going to do a double row stitch by hand to recreate what the factory did, because hold down constructions or turn down constructions, they don't have a welt, and so it's such a soft leather, the machine stitcher will not necessarily find all the original holes, and it makes new holes in the upper, making the upper weak. It also looks terrible when you get done. So that's why we prefer to do a hand stitch, even though it's a whole lot more work, as you're about to see, because that machine can punch a hole and put a stitch in a whole lot faster than we can just punch a hole. So here's how I go about doing that. Now this job is made easier than the other boot because I didn't remove the original midsole, and I can feel down with my awl and find where the hole's going and then punch it through my new midsole. I use a piece of EVA to punch against. It's nice soft stuff. It's firm enough to take the blow of my hammer and allow this to go through, but soft enough it doesn't break my tip of my punch awl. Okay, so that's one row punched in. Now I get to punch the next row. Fun city. So this brings me to a point I wanted to make in the video. So with this one, we're doing the 100 sole. So all my stitching is going to be buried under a glue-on sole. I don't have to try to punch these holes to line up with a channel. So it's also a little bit faster this way than it is when I'm stitching, hand stitching, and got to come out in an outsole, because on this, if I get a stitch just a little bit crooked on the bottom, the top's going to look good, and that's what really matters when you're stitching one that goes through the outsole. You not only have to line up with the top holes, but you also have to line up with your channel so that it looks right. Now, a lot of people want their outsole stitched, so we do it. But here's the thing, outsoles used to be stitched because glues weren't that good and the stitches is what did the holding. Nowadays the glues have improved tremendously just in the 30 years plus years I've been in the business. And there are so many soles that are just glued on now. Like this one, the midsoles are going to be stitched on, and that's going to be important. But the sole itself is not going to be stitched to this upper. So, and that type of bonding has been going on for over 30 years. And glues are better, so it's not really necessary. So the beauty of these being my boots, and me going through this trouble this time, when I wear out that 100 sole or decide to change it just because I want to try a new sole for you guys, I don't have to re-hand stitch all this because that stitching will still be there. It'll still be in place. It'll still be good and strong because it's a nylon thread versus a linen thread, so it's not going to dry rot and be weak after a while. So there's a lot of benefits to this type of job that I'm doing. And in the future, all I've got to do is peel and stick. Now that's two things. It's a benefit to me as a cobbler because I don't have to do this slow, tedious process every time I wear out a sole, which is usually about once a year. So when you go through soles like I do, you don't want to have to do that. And ta-da! Last hole. Looks pretty cool. Got my lines around. Now, the hard part, I gotta hand sew this. Okay, I want to make sure I got plenty of thread for my top. So I got my top going. Now what I want to do is I want to hook it on the barb. You got to be careful not to pop your barb, so I slide that up and then get it to pull through. Now I pull my top through, make sure I've got plenty, because I've got this on trusty spool for the bottom side. Get that barb right there. Get it to the thing, and then you can let go of the thread. You got to be careful pulling through, like you saw how that kind of jerked. If you don't have enough loop on your barb and you run out, that barb will slice your thread into, and you got to back up and start all over. Man, that's a pain in the butt. So I pull the thread to where it feels like it's right about to the center, and then I lock it down. See, I want to get a big enough loop. See, I could just do it like right here, but if I snatch, I can cut my thread in two. So I want to swing it out and have me a good sized loop on there. Pull it until I get my barb right there. I'll pull this through. And see, that knot right there is what I want to end up on the inside, in between the sole and the, so I pull it in and then I lock it down. know I mentioned a whole lot of things I've done in this boot. Well, one of the things I didn't mention is I fixed shoes. And right here at the tip of my toe, you can see it's black. That's because I dropped a drop of black dye on my boot. And it plagued me ever since because I can see it every time I turn around. Okay, last stitch of the first row. What I do is I pull it through like this, pull my loop in, then I leave it a kind of big, pull it through like that, bring it all the way through. Tie it in a knot, then I tie it in a double loop. Pull it tight. Cut it off and leave a little bit of a whip so my glue will hold it and it'll pull it over. So, not too bad. Especially since I didn't have to follow a channel. So, now I got to do the long run. Let's see, if I pull it too tight, the bobbin comes out that side and the knot comes out that side, so I want to pull it back, get it in the middle. Alright, so I'm in the home stretch here of the second row, coming off of the last stitch in the turn down part, and then it'll be just a matter of sewing the two midsoles together, because the first midsole is pegged to the upper, and I wanted to make sure had a really good solid bond. Now the key is don't let that barb be too far away with this type of thread, because it's so slick it just falls out while you're trying to pull everything down. So I get it right there at the edge, and then I can pull it through. When I did the first row on this boot, I did it the old-fashioned way, where I stretch out so much thread when I'm doing welts and stuff. But on this one, I came up with a nifty idea of bringing my thread that's going around the front, cutting it, and not cutting the other side. And I ran it up here and set my spool of thread on my cement pot, so it just kind of pulls as I go. Because I have been sewing and run out of thread from the bottom side before. Alright, the last couple of stitches. Now, right here on this one, you can see the stitches ran off from the factory, so I didn't want to follow those holes, so I had to make me some new holes, because don't want to recreate the same problem. So on all glue-on soles, rubber soles, I like to use Reagol as a primer. It just makes the top fit bond so much better. CDC also, if you're still using that. Some people clean their soles with acetone, and that's fine. Some people clean them with thinner, that's fine also, but we found that cleaning them with the Reagol does a lot better. Now you put the Reagol on, you let it dry 30 to 40 minutes, and then it's ready to put the CDC or the top fit to it. Now, you guys have followed along, have heard cement don't stick where cement ain't at, because that's what my brother told me a whole bunch when I first started. But also, too thick a cement is just as bad as no cement. So when you put it on thick so you get it on everything, and then thin it down. So trying to get the shiny spots here for you to see. There's no real thick globs. So you want to smear it on, then you want to spread it back off. Okay, now we got these stuck, and unlike our old glue we were using CDC before. We had to let this sit overnight. Now with the new glue top fit, we are only having to let it sit for 3 hours. However, we can go ahead and trim around the heel, rough up here, get the base on, get the heels on, let everything sit, and at the end of the 3 hours, then we'll be good to go to just sand out the whole thing. So you don't have to just stop where you are when you're working on the boot and let it sit over there. There's still things that can be done. So we're gonna go ahead and attach the bases and then attach the heel. Okay, so one thing I like to do before I heat up the sole, because I don't want it to get hot again because this glue is heat activated, so I like to put a rag over it when I'm doing the bases. And that way only my heel area is going to get hot. Okay, so one of the benefits of gluing the base on is I don't have to put nails in it before I level it up. You can see it has a huge hump in it. There's no way that heel's going to sit properly. So I've got to get rid of that, and it doesn't tear up my sanding belt. So as you can see, that's way too high. of a heel. It's got it jacked way up. Even if I lower it down to the lowest point in my heel right here, that's still way too high. So I'm gonna have to take a layer of leather out. I was hoping to have a 3-layer, but it's not gonna work on this boot. So I'm gonna pull a layer off, and then we're gonna start leveling all over again. Okay, so now I've got to get this hump out of the 2-layer, and then we'll see where it comes out. I'm also going to go ahead and take the cup out of the 100 heel, because with doing it with a base the way I'm doing it, it's going to work better if I don't have that cup in there. You can see I've got a nice balance here now. My heel height is not too high above the ball of the foot. I've got a nice flush sitting. If you notice, I sanded the 100 heel at a slant because I could only take out that much in the base. I can't take out any more, or I'm going to be cutting into my sole. And so I undercut the 100 heel at a slant so I could match everything up the way I want to. Now, if this were a serious logging boot, hiking boot, where you're going to be really stressing that 100 heel all the time, you wouldn't want to do this, because there are washers inside of each one of these, and I just made those washers get closer to the edge. However, because I'm going to be gluing this heel on, that's going to reinforce those areas, and we don't have to worry about it being able to peel off so much. So because this is going to be mostly a casual boot that I will do some hiking and stuff in, it is going to be okay to do this, but I wouldn't want to do that if I was going to be doing real serious hiking in another style of boot that's made for that stuff. What I would want to do would be remove another layer and then leave that cup so that I could cup up and match that heel base with the curve that was in their 100 heel originally. But this works out great for this style. So what I'm going to use is the 10/8 shoe nails for nailing my heel base on. Now what this does is this will go through my base, through my double midsole, and into the inner sole, and it's going to clench, and that's going to hold it on. As you saw in the teardown, they originally used threaded nails that came up from the inside. But because of the way I built this and what I plan on using it for, I prefer this method for this application. It's not that one is wrong, because we do that on certain things as well. Okay, now we just cement our base and our heel and put our rag back over this to protect it. Now, if you're wondering why I didn't use Reagol on the heel like I did on the sole, it's because the heel does have those washers, and I am going to use nails in it, so I don't have to really worry about the bond being extra superior. Okay, so now this one is ready to finish out our 3 hours, and then we'll be ready to sand it all out and finish them up. So I wet sanded it with the smooth paper. Now I'm going to wet sand it again. Don't spend a lot of time on this. As you can see, I'm just quickly going over it. Leather's like wood, it's porous. You need to just shut the pores down a little bit and it'll get a smoother finish. Okay. So we're in the final touches here. I've got the everything sanded out. It's dry now. So I like to use, I'm going to do a natural edge finish on this and see how I like it. And if it goes good, I'll keep it. If not, I can always darken it. So I use Angelus neutral paste polish. The reason I'm using a rag is so I can dig it into the pores of the leather real good. That way it'll hold up under weather, stuff like that. The cool thing about it is, if I get stuck in snow and things like that and too much of it, I just break out the neutral paste and re-edge it. Now this is a little darker than what it will dry because it's wet. Going on. But it's going to be really close to this. And there we go. Nice smooth finish. I'll buff it again after it has time to set in there and dry. That'll give it a little bit better look, a little bit better shine, because it's still wet right now. I could buff it for 10 minutes, or I can let it dry for 10 minutes and then buff it for a few seconds. So while I'm waiting on that, I'm gonna change up my laces. Earlier I said that I was going to talk about these laces. So when I got these boots in, I thought these laces will not last. They're very thin, much like a dress lace that we sell, but they did not give me any trouble at all for a full year. And the only reason I'm switching over to leather now is because I actually like leather laces. So there's no reason to change those laces out. So kudos to them on their lace company. Seems to hold up real well. Alright, so here we have the finished product. So for you guys, I went with the 100 sole on here so that I can test them out and give people personal testimonies about it. I've actually never worn the 100 sole before. I loved my commando soles that were on these Bordons, but I just got to test everything to see how it works. We went with a extra leather midsole to give it a little bit beefier performance when I do take it hiking and things like that, because I really want to test this thing with the hiking a lot more than I did, even though I enjoyed it for what little bit of hiking I did, but it was more of a afternoon hike, not a couple of days worth of hiking and stuff like that. So because it hugged my foot so well of all the way around, it was one of the most comfortable boots I've been out hiking in, other than the fact that the midsole was not really designed for that. So now it should be built for that, and I'm pretty excited about this. Overall, an excellent boot. Check out Bordon. They're really cool boots, and they're all handmade. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but they are. So hope you enjoyed it.